Hey teachers, I know that finding quality online materials for your adult English learners can be tough. If you do a random search for ESL activities online, the types of things that typically come up are like random games that can be fun but not necessarily relevant to what you're trying to teach your students, or maybe a collection of discussion prompts or questions, which again can be interesting but don't necessarily have any context, and it can be tough to fit them into the bigger picture of a cohesive, actually useful lesson. Or the other big problem is that you'll often find a ton of materials that are designed for kids, and so they come across as way too juvenile or irrelevant or even downright patronizing if you try to use them with your adult students. But the good news is that you can find quality materials online for your ESL classes with adult learners without spending hours and hours searching for them. In this video, I'll share my favorite sources of online lesson material and a little bit about my process for finding material and building it into a useful and relevant lesson for my students. And by the way, if you haven't met me before, hi, I'm Shannon. I have been an ESL teacher and a teacher trainer, mainly working with teachers who work with adult learners for many years now. And these days, I mostly work completely online, helping ESL teachers be as successful and confident as they can be. So I've been all over the internet looking for the most useful materials for virtual and online lessons, and here's what I found. One great place to find online materials is actually through some of the big publishing companies in our English language teaching industry. My personal favorite is Oxford University Press. So they publish a course book series that I really like called English File, and you can buy the English File books in ebook forms on their website. But the great thing about Oxford University Press is if you go to their website, it actually has a ton of great resources that you can access for free. So I'll take you over there and let's have a look. So here I am at OUP's website, Oxford University Press, and you can see the web address here is elt.oup.com. So that's where you can go as well if you want to check this out. And I would encourage you to come and check this out when you have time to explore and really look around at everything you can find here. But I just wanted to point out three things while we're here together that you might find particularly useful. So the first thing is you can see here across the top, the Learning Resources Bank. If you click on that, it's going to take you to a selection of the different titles that OUP publishes. The one I mentioned that I really like is English File, so you can find American English File here. So if I click on that one, for example, it's going to give me a resource section for each of the different levels. So let's say I'm working with intermediate level students. I can click on level 3 to find some additional intermediate level resources. From here, I have two options. There are progress checks and there's also the download center. The progress checks are basically online sort of test-like exercises. Honestly, you could even use these as a placement test and even have students do these near the beginning of their work with you to kind of get a sense of their level. And if you look, there is a place for them to check their answers at the end so they can see how they did. And if you take a look back at the selection of progress checks here, if they're doing well on, say, the file 4 progress check in level 3 intermediate, then you have a sense that they're kind of in the middle of intermediate level, right? Versus if they're able to get most of the questions correct on the file 10 progress check, that's a good indication that they've probably progressed even beyond intermediate level and are ready for upper intermediate. So that's one thing you have here and one idea of how you might use it. But if we go back to level 3 and check out this download center, here is where there's a wealth of materials that you can use. So English File, I believe now is up to the 4th or 5th edition in terms of the most recent student book that you can purchase. But they do have all of the audio for the 3rd edition available here in the download center on their website. So again, you can find all of the audio and download it for free to the student book, for the workbook, and then you can even find these videos in case you want to design a lesson around a video for your students. So for example, if we click on short movies, we can see the different topics that each video is about, and you can see if there are things that you think your students might be interested in. Of course, the only downside here is that if you don't have the student book or the workbook, if you haven't purchased that from Oxford University Press, then you're going to have to create the activities yourself. But at least it's a way, especially if you use the videos, where you know that if you come here, the level will be appropriate for your learners. It's already graded down for intermediate level students in this case. And then you can design activities around it. This could save you a ton of time in that you don't have to search for like the perfect YouTube video that won't be too challenging for your students. Another really great thing that you can find on OUP's website, if we head back to the homepage, I would encourage you to join the Oxford Teachers Club. So this is going to have even more free resources that you can use as a teacher. It is free to sign up. You just need to put in your name and email address and create a free account, which I've done. And then once you've done that and you log in, it's going to offer you a bunch of different resources that you can use for your students and your classes. And they're even helpfully categorized by the different titles that OUP offers, and even by the type of English that you're teaching, whether it's adults, teenagers, business English, academic purposes, and so forth. So again, if I head back to that English file title that I particularly like, and we check out the teaching resources, here's where you have a ton of additional resources and materials. So there's a syllabus that you can download for each level, so from starter all the way up to advanced. You can download the introduction from the teacher's book. You can download helpful vocabulary lists. There's a whole section of end of lesson coolers in case you need quick sort of time filler activities. And if you scroll down, you can even find pre-made grammar PowerPoint slides to help you with the different grammar points that come up in the English file series. And if you go back to the beginning of that Teachers Club section and go just to the Teaching Adults section, rather than the specific English file section that I showed you before, if you scroll down a little bit, there is a whole wealth of extra activities hidden right here on OUP's website. There are even extra lesson plans, worksheets, word lists, tons of different things that you can download, again, for free. A second really great way to find material online for your lessons, which I particularly love doing, is to use authentic materials. So just in case, authentic materials are materials that are out there in the world, not designed for English learning. So they're just there to be consumed by already confident, proficient, everyday users of English, right? So things like TED Talks or articles, podcasts, blog posts, even restaurant menus that you could find online or social media posts. Anything that has not been graded down to the level of a language learner and that is not exclusively designed for English learning purposes, but just for everyday communication in English purposes, would count as authentic material. So I know what you might be thinking. Yes, great, I get that I can use authentic materials for my lessons, but which authentic materials? Where do I find them exactly? Because I know that it's easy to get lost down a rabbit hole of endless YouTube videos or articles, right? And then you end up spending hours looking for the perfect example of that one phrasal verb that you could swear you heard somewhere in that video, or, an article that just happens to have a bunch of examples of that grammar structure that you want to teach. It's really easy to get lost and waste time doing that. So here is my big secret for using authentic materials and avoiding those pitfalls. Ready? Start with context. So let me show you what I mean. So to start with context, consider a topic that you know your students are interested in, and then find an article or TED Talk or something similar about that topic. So for example, maybe you know that your students are particularly interested in food and cooking. So you could Google something related to that topic, like, let's go over here and Google, like maybe interesting foods from around the world. And here are some articles: the 50 weirdest foods from around the world, traditional food, 30 must-eat dishes from around the world. So I could click on any of these articles, see if any of them look like things my students would like, and then of course shorten or adapt those articles as needed to start with context that I know my students will like. Or maybe, again, if I know my students are interested in a topic like food and cooking, maybe I Google cooking secrets. and then I find this article, 50 Secrets That Chefs Won't Tell You. In addition to Googling like this and typically finding articles or blog posts, there's also a category or a playlist already on TED Talks that are really short talks, so usually 5 minutes or under 5 minutes. So you can go to TED.com and look for that category, or you can just Google, honestly, 5-minute TED Talks, and it's going to take you here where you have, again, this whole playlist of talks that would be great for a lesson since they're not super long. So you could also, again, start with that same context, maybe food and cooking as our example, come here to the under 5-minute TED Talk category, and then see if any of the TED Talks sort of fit into that topic that you're already searching for. So for example, yeah, here's one, Why I'm a Weekday Vegetarian. So the great thing now about finding an article or video to start is that once you're comfortable using lesson frameworks, right, once you know the different stages and what kind of activities you need to build out a whole lesson, you can create a reading lesson around any article or a whole listening lesson around any video. So there's one whole lesson right there. And then from there, you can also look and see what kind of language is already in the article or the video. And I guarantee that you'll find at least a couple of different options of language points that you could focus on. So for example, let's take a look at that 50 Secrets That Chefs Won't Tell You article. And I'll show you how you could use this to do exactly what I just mentioned. So if we're using this article as our material, the first thing you'll probably want to do is cut it down a little bit because 50 secrets is a lot and this is going to be super long. So what I might do is just go through and choose the 5 that I find the most interesting or the most digestible for my students. And then I would take those 5, right, those 5 sections and reformat them. I would probably pop them into a Google Doc or a Google Form so that it's really easy to share with my students. This is a great way that you can adapt for different levels. So if you are teaching a lower level, like pre-intermediate students, you can still use authentic materials. I could still use this very article. I would probably just control the length much more closely. Like maybe I would only choose 2 of these or 3 of these at the most. And I might even adapt within the actual section, right, to make sure that the language was a little bit simpler and wasn't going to trip them up too much. And then if I was teaching a higher level, like upper intermediate or advanced, then I could use more of these. Like maybe I would choose 8 of them and not do any adapting other than the length. Okay, and again, as I'm looking through these, remember, you're going to want to choose topics that you know your students are interested in. So just looking at this, I'm realizing that I'm not particularly interested in cooking, so I'm not really sure why I chose that topic as an example. But again, we're just using it as an example. So let's imagine that I know my students are super interested in food and cooking, and so I know that this particular article or topic is going to be relevant for them. Okay, so as I mentioned, in addition to creating a whole reading lesson around this, which I could do again with some adapting of the formatting and the length as needed, I can also create a whole separate lesson after that based around language, like particular grammar or particular vocabulary that I can find in this article. So if I take a look at the article, just from starting to skim this, I'm already seeing a couple examples of conditionals. So for example, if you're not prepared, you'll be overwhelmed. Let's see what else we have here. If you really want to save money and create a kitchen economy, it's worth it to learn how to cut up a whole chicken. If an onion wants to get you, it will. So right there, there's 3 different examples of conditionals just in the first few of the 50 secrets. And so I'm sure if I looked through this a bit more closely, I could pick out even more examples and really sort of home in on the ones that I like best. I'm also seeing, as I look through this, some examples of superlatives. Here's one. It's the best way to stay calm, the best thing you learn in culinary school. Chicken is one of the most economical protein options. So if I wanted to go that direction, I could do that as well. And again, I could even adapt some of these to make the actual vocabulary a little bit simpler, like maybe chicken is one of the cheapest protein options, or chicken is one of the most affordable protein options, if I'm worried that the students are going to be distracted by the vocabulary when I'm trying to focus on the grammar point. Remember, you're in charge here, so if you need to make some adaptations to the material, that's totally fine. Make it work for you. The great thing about this is now you don't need to come up with an idea or try to invent material. You can use this as a really easy jumping off point. And then it's way easier to just make a few little adjustments as needed rather than trying to create something completely from scratch or spending hours and hours searching for that one perfect example of a superlative in something that you don't know exists yet, right? Remember as well that you don't need to have every example of the target language that you want to teach already in the article. So you can plant more examples, and you can also, again, just use it as a jumping off point. So for those conditionals that we found, maybe you use 2 conditionals that you find in the article, and then you just create 2 more examples that also just happen to be in the context of cooking, and then you can build your lesson from there. You could then create practice activities, again, where the context is cooking, all the sentences happen to be about cooking. And for the freer practice, maybe students could share their own cooking secrets or good food secrets from their own culture. Using conditionals, you get the idea. The hard part, the context, is done, right, with the article that we found. Once you have that, it's way easier to make everything fit with that into this really nice, cohesive lesson that builds on itself. So after this, obviously, I'm still going to need to take some time to format my slides and the actual exercises. Obviously, I'm not going to want to just send students this link because there's lots of distracting things, as you can see, advertisements and stuff happening on the side. And I'm going to want to format this down without these, giant pictures so it could all fit neatly like on one doc or Google form. So that is going to take a little bit of time. But the cool thing, as hopefully you've seen, is that I've now essentially planned out 2 whole lessons. I have a whole reading lesson that I've already brainstormed through in my head and a whole grammar lesson just by starting with context. And it took me like 2 seconds to Google and find this article. The key is you just need to know what to do with it. And then finally, if you really want to cut down on your planning time, you can consider using an online membership or subscription service that provides already made, really good quality, cohesive lesson plans. And you may not know this, but I actually have a whole lesson plan library that you can find at TEFLhorizons.com if you find lesson plan library across the main menu. And here I have for you a whole collection of full ready-made lesson plans that you can use with your students online. So they're all different levels, all different topics. You can search the categories at the top and find one that appeals to you, or just look through and see what you have here. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to use this writing lesson with your students where they write a Yelp-style restaurant review. So you can purchase it here. Each lesson plan is $7.99. And then once you purchase it, it will automatically be sent directly to your email, and you can start using it right away. And when I say it's the full lesson plan, I mean everything you need to teach a really effective dynamic lesson. So you get to download the entire lesson plan, and it's both in PDF and Word doc form in case you want to make any changes. I've already anticipated potential problems for you and provided solutions, and then I give you a full procedure that lines up with my PowerPoint slides, so it walks you through exactly what to do and how to use the materials at each particular point in the lesson. And then, of course, you get all the materials as well. So here's just a little sampling of the PowerPoint slides for this particular lesson. You have discussion questions at the beginning. The students then read a Yelp-style restaurant review so that they get an example of the kind of text they're going to write. That leads into an exercise where they focus on some useful language for the writing task. That leads into a focus on the structure of the Yelp review, so what kind of information should go in each paragraph, a brainstorming stage. And then finally, I've created a Google Doc template for you that you get to make your own copy of to share with your students, where again, the students can reference the example reviews, and then they have a really nice template where they can write their own review so that they can then share it with their classmates. They can also add pictures and their classmates can comment. And again, that's just one of the lesson plans that I have for you in the library. They're all based around authentic materials and real life, very relevant tasks for your learners. And again, you can search based on the level and based on the topic that you think your students would be interested in. If this is something that you want, but you don't want to pay $7.99 every single time you want to download a lesson, then definitely join my TEFL Horizons membership. In the membership, you get a free lesson plan. So one of those lesson plans I showed you, you get to choose which one you want every single month. We also do a live group training session every single month. So once a month, you can join me and the other members on Zoom. You can turn on your camera, you can say hi, interact with me and the other teachers there as much as you'd like. And we actually workshop how to plan and teach a particular type of lesson. So very similar to what I walked you through in this YouTube video, but in much more depth, we'll look at how to take a particular material and really walk through exactly what to do with it to build out a really effective lesson that your students will love. So again, we do that every month. You get a free lesson plan every month. And there are a bunch of other great benefits just for TEFL Horizons members. So head over to teflhorizons.com/membership to check it out. And you even get a really great discount for a limited time. So head over and start saving yourself hours of lesson planning time. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments, and also let me know what other questions you have about lesson planning or about finding useful online materials for your adult ESL students. And I'll see you in the next video. Happy teaching.